Do you think the boogeyman is just a childhood myth? A simple story parents tell their children to make them behave? What if I told you that the truth behind this legend is far more disturbing than you've been led to believe? That there's a reason this particular entity appears in cultures across the globe throughout recorded history, always watching from the shadows? Tonight, we uncover what governments, historians, and researchers have systematically hidden for centuries. The real story behind the boogeyman. The evidence has always been there, scattered, suppressed, and dismissed, but when assembled, it reveals something far more terrifying than any childhood nightmare. The earliest documented encounter dates back to 1572 in the small village of Harwick, England. Local records, recently uncovered in the basement archives of Cambridge University, describe a series of strange disappearances. 7 children vanished over the course of 3 months. No bodies were ever found. The village magistrate, Thomas Caldwell, kept detailed accounts of the investigation, noting something peculiar. Each child reported seeing a tall man with no face watching them from their windows in the days before they vanished. Caldwell interviewed the parents of young Elizabeth Marlowe, the 3rd child to disappear. They described how their daughter had become increasingly afraid of her bedroom closet, insisting something was breathing in there at night. The father checked multiple times. Empty. Always empty. Until the morning they found Elizabeth's bed vacant, the closet door standing wide open, no signs of forced entry, no footprints in the soft earth outside her window, nothing. What's most disturbing is what happened to Caldwell himself. His final journal entry simply reads, "It watches me now too. From reflections, from shadows, it knows I see it." 3 days later, the magistrate disappeared. The case was never solved. The record sealed under order of the local church, citing matters of delicate and potentially blasphemous nature. Centuries passed. The pattern continued. In 1845, a series of similar incidents occurred in Vienna, Austria. 5 children vanished from the wealthy Steinberg district over 6 weeks. Austrian police records, accessed through a Freedom of Information request filed in 1998, reveal that each child complained of a tall, thin shadow that would stand in the corner of their rooms at night. Parents dismissed these stories as nightmares. The official investigation focused on a local chimney sweep, who was eventually cleared of all charges when 2 more children disappeared while he was in custody. Detective Klaus Hermann led the investigation. His personal notes, never officially filed but discovered in his private collection after his death, contain disturbing observations. The children who have not yet been taken speak of the same figure. They call it der Knochenmann, the bone man. They say it whispers to them, it promises gifts, it asks to be invited inside. Hermann's investigation took an unusual turn when he began interviewing local elderly residents. One woman, Elise Gruber, then 94 years old, claimed similar disappearances had occurred when she was a child, and before that, in her grandmother's time. Always the same pattern. Always preceded by sightings of the same entity. Hermann's final report was never submitted. He was found in his study, pen still in hand, expression frozen in what the coroner described as profound terror. The official cause of death was listed as heart failure. The case was closed. The disappearances stopped. The city moved on, but the pattern continued elsewhere. 1912, Moscow. 1937, Buenos Aires. 1954, Tokyo. Different cultures, different languages, yet the descriptions remained consistent. A tall, thin figure, barely visible in darkness, watching children, whispering to them, and then they would vanish. The most thoroughly documented case occurred in Lakewood, Colorado in 1978. The disappearance of 6 children over 8 months prompted what FBI records describe as extensive investigation under unusual parameters. Case file number 78-3411, partially declassified in 2001 but heavily redacted, contains interviews with the friends and siblings of the missing children. 10-year-old Michael Pearson disappeared on March 14, 1978. His best friend, David Keller, told investigators, "Mike said there was someone tall standing outside his window at night. His parents couldn't see it, but it was there. He said it had long fingers that would tap on the glass." When asked to draw what his friend had described, David produced a chilling sketch of an impossibly tall, thin figure with elongated limbs and no distinguishable facial features. Special Agent Robert Chandler led the investigation. His field notes reveal a disturbing pattern. Each missing child had reported similar sightings in the weeks before their disappearance. They called the entity different names: the Tall Man, the Shadow Man, the Boogeyman, but the descriptions matched. Parents had checked rooms, installed additional locks, even stayed up through the night. It made no difference. The most disturbing evidence came from the Chambers residence, where 8-year-old Sarah became the fourth victim. Her parents had installed a home security system after the first disappearances. On the night Sarah vanished, the system showed no signs of entry or exit. The security tape, included in the FBI files but later removed from all copies, reportedly showed something unusual. According to Agent Chandler's notes, at 2:17 a.m., the camera in Sarah's room experiences 3 seconds of static. When the image clears, the closet doors open. Sarah is gone. Review of footage shows no one entering or exiting the room. Agent Chandler became increasingly obsessed with the case. His superior, Section Chief Thomas Walters, eventually removed him from the investigation, citing psychological concerns and unorthodox investigative approaches. In his final unauthorized report, Chandler wrote, "What we're dealing with defies conventional explanation. The entity seems to exist just beyond our perception. It's seen primarily by children, but adults report feeling watched in the locations prior to incidents. It leaves no physical evidence. It bypasses security. It operates according to patterns that suggest intelligence and purpose." Chandler disappeared 2 weeks after being removed from the case. His apartment was found empty, no signs of struggle. His final journal entry, never included in official reports but leaked by a department clerk in 1994, read simply, "I see it now too. It knows I'm looking for it. I think that's why it's shown itself to me. God help me." The Lakewood case was officially closed as unsolved in 1979. The disappearances ceased. Like all the others, the pattern stopped abruptly, only to emerge elsewhere years later. What makes these cases more than just disturbing coincidences is the consistency across time and cultures. Folklorists have long noted that every culture has some version of the boogeyman, but they've dismissed this as parallel evolution of a useful parental control mechanism. Be good or the boogeyman will get you. A simple threat to ensure good behavior. But anthropologist Dr. Eliza Merrick proposed a different theory in her controversial and subsequently suppressed 1985 paper, Transtemporal Predation Patterns in Global Folklore. Merrick suggested that these weren't separate cultural myths that coincidentally shared similarities. They were global documentation of encounters with the same entity. Her research cataloged over 300 cases spanning 27 countries, all following the same pattern. Children report seeing a tall, shadowy figure. Adults cannot perceive it clearly. Children disappear without evidence. Cases cluster in time and location, then abruptly stop, only to appear elsewhere. Merrick's academic career ended shortly after submitting her paper. Official records state she resigned to pursue personal interests. Her colleagues reported she had become paranoid and obsessive, claiming she was being watched. She withdrew from public life entirely. Her research materials were never found. In 2004, paranormal researcher James Sullivan attempted to track down Dr. Merrick for an interview. He traced her to a small apartment in Portland, Oregon. What he found, according to his blog post, removed within 48 hours of publication, was troubling. The walls were covered with children's drawings, hundreds of them, from different eras, different countries, all showing the same figure, tall, thin, featureless, watching. Merrick herself was gone. Her neighbor said she left in the middle of the night 2 days before I arrived. No forwarding address. Sullivan himself disappeared 3 weeks later. His final social media post, a Twitter message sent at 3:14 a.m., read, "It's standing in my hallway. I can see it from the corner of my eye. When I turn, it's gone. I know now why the children call it the boogeyman." The pattern of evidence continues into recent years. Between 2012 and 2014, 11 children vanished from the suburban communities surrounding Portland, Maine. Each disappearance followed the now familiar pattern. Each investigation reached the same dead end. Each case eventually went cold. Detective Sarah Linden led the Portland investigation. Her approach was different. She specifically looked for patterns matching historical cases. She compiled children's statements, not just from the families of those who disappeared, but from their classmates and friends. The results were chilling. A local elementary school art teacher, concerned about disturbing themes in her students' drawings, had collected dozens of pictures showing the same tall, thin figure. When interviewed separately, children described seeing this entity in various locations, outside windows, in closets, in the dark corners of their rooms. Many reported hearing whispers at night, promises, invitations. What troubled Detective Linden most was that many of these children lived miles apart, attended different schools, had never met, yet they described the same entity in nearly identical terms. This wasn't a case of suggestion or mass hysteria. Something was watching these children. Something was selecting them. Linden took unprecedented steps, installing surveillance equipment in the homes of children who reported sightings. What she captured defies explanation. The footage, leaked briefly to a local news station before being confiscated by federal agents, showed a chilling sequence from the Turner residence. 2:43 a.m. The camera shows 7-year-old Emily Turner sleeping peacefully. 2:44 a.m. The closet door, previously closed, is now open approximately 3 inches. 2:47 a.m. The feed experiences interference, showing static for 8 seconds. 2:47 a.m. When the image stabilizes, the closet door is fully open. 2:51 a.m. Another burst of static lasting 12 seconds. 2:51 a.m. The feed returns. Emily is no longer in her bed. The room is empty. Review of the house's security system showed no entries or exits. All windows remained locked. No other cameras in the house captured any movement. Emily Turner was never found. Detective Linden became increasingly isolated as her investigation continued. Her supervisors warned her about pursuing unprovable theories. Her requests for additional surveillance equipment were denied. Her case notes began to show signs of strain. "I know how this sounds. I know what they think of me now. But I've seen the footage. I've interviewed the children. Something is taking them. Something that knows how to avoid detection. Something that has been doing this for centuries." 3 months into her investigation, Linden submitted a comprehensive report detailing the historical patterns, the consistent witness descriptions across centuries, and her own evidence. The report was rejected. She was placed on administrative leave, citing stress-related concerns. 2 weeks later, she disappeared. Her apartment was found empty except for hundreds of children's drawings pinned to the walls, all showing the same figure. The official explanation was that Linden suffered a psychological break and left town. Her case files were sealed. The investigation was reassigned and quietly closed months later. The disappearances stopped, just like every time before. What emerges from these scattered cases is a disturbing pattern that spans centuries. The entity, call it the Boogeyman or whatever name fits your cultural context, appears to target children primarily. It makes itself visible to them first. It watches, it waits, it whispers, then it takes them. But there's another pattern that's equally troubling. Those adults who begin to perceive the pattern, who investigate too deeply, who get too close to some kind of truth, they too vanish. Thomas Caldwell in 1572, Klaus Hermann in 1845, Robert Chandler in 1978, Eliza Merrick in 1985, James Sullivan in 2004, Sarah Linden in 2014. What happens to these investigators? What happens to the children? No bodies are ever found, no evidence of violence. They simply cease to exist in our world. The most recent cluster of cases began in November 2023 in the suburban communities around Minneapolis, Minnesota. To date, 9 children have vanished. Local police have no leads. Federal authorities have taken over the investigation, citing possible interstate aspects. But internal sources reveal they're as baffled as everyone else. Parents in the area report their children are afraid to sleep alone. They speak of a tall shadow that watches them. Schools have noted an increase in disturbing artwork, always the same figure, always watching. The pattern is repeating again, as it always has. What's most disturbing about this ongoing case is what happened 2 weeks ago. Minneapolis Star-Tribune journalist Rebecca Chen had been covering the disappearances since they began. Her reporting took a turn when she started connecting these cases to historical patterns. Her editor rejected a feature piece titled "The Real Boogeyman: Centuries of Stolen Children," calling it irresponsible speculation. Chen published it anyway on her personal blog. Within hours, the post was removed. Her social media accounts went silent. Colleagues who went to check on her found her apartment empty, her research materials gone, as if she never existed. Before her disappearance, Chen had sent encrypted files to trusted colleagues. These files, now circulating in carefully protected corners of the internet, contained something unprecedented: a collection of photographs taken from surveillance cameras, trail cameras, and security footage from locations near disappearances. Most show nothing unusual. But 5 images, when enhanced and analyzed, appear to contain the same anomaly: a tall, unnaturally thin silhouette, partially visible at the edge of the frame. Analysis experts confirm these images have not been manipulated. We are seeing what has always been there, watching from just beyond our perception. But why? What is this entity that has moved through human history, taking children, remaining just beyond our ability to comprehend? What does it want? Where does it take them? Theories abound. Some religious scholars suggest it's an ancient entity feeding on innocence. Quantum physicists propose the possibility of a being existing partially in our dimension, able to move between realities. Folklore experts point to the consistency of accounts suggesting not myth, but documentation of genuine encounters across cultures. Dr. Marcus Whitley, professor of comparative mythology at Columbia University, offered a disturbing perspective in a lecture shortly before his sabbatical last year. What we call the Boogeyman appears to be singular, one entity moving through human history. It doesn't kill. It collects. It selects. The consistent descriptions across centuries and cultures suggest purpose, intelligence, pattern. This isn't a predator acting on instinct. This is something that watches, chooses, and takes. Dr. Whitley hasn't returned to his position. The university states he extended his sabbatical indefinitely. His home remains vacant. His research materials missing. What happens when we look too closely at what has been watching us? What happens when we begin to see what has always remained just beyond perception? The pattern suggests a troubling answer. The most recent development in this ongoing mystery comes from Minneapolis. 3 days ago, 10-year-old Zoe Lambert, whose best friend was the 7th child to disappear, was admitted to Children's Hospital following what doctors described as an acute psychological episode. According to hospital records accessed through a confidential source, Zoe woke screaming in the night, then couldn't be calmed for hours. When finally able to speak, she told doctors something chilling. It's bringing them back. But they're different now. They're still children, but they're not right anymore. Their eyes are wrong. It's putting them back, but it's keeping something from them. And now they help it watch. They help it choose. Zoe's current condition is unknown. The hospital has no record of her discharge, but she's no longer in their system. Her parents aren't answering calls. Neighbors report they haven't seen the family in 2 days. The pattern continues. It's happening again, right now. And yet we've been conditioned to dismiss these connections, to ignore the pattern, to tell ourselves these are just stories. But ask yourself this: why does every culture have a boogeyman? Why do children across time and space describe the same entity? Why do those who investigate too deeply vanish? What if the most terrifying truth is that we've been looking at actual evidence all along, dismissing it as folklore? And now you know. Now you've seen the pattern too. You've looked too closely at what watches from the shadows. Do you feel it? That subtle shift in your awareness, that feeling of being observed just beyond the corner of your eye? That's how it begins. First, you notice the pattern. Then, it notices you noticing. It's probably just your imagination. That movement in your peripheral vision, that sense of being watched when you're alone. The strange dreams you'll have tonight, the whispers you'll almost hear, but not quite make out. If you're watching this, You're part of it now. You've seen the evidence. You know the truth that's been hidden in plain sight for centuries. The boogeyman is real. It's always been real. And it's been watching us from the spaces between perception, from closets and shadows, from under beds and beyond windows. Selecting, taking. Returning some, perhaps, but changed. Tonight, when you're alone in the darkness, pay attention to that feeling. The sense that the empty spaces in your room aren't really empty at all. That the darkness isn't just absence of light, but presence of something else. Something watching, something waiting. And if you begin to see it, that tall, thin silhouette at the edge of your vision, remember the pattern. Remember what happens to those who look too closely. Remember what happens when it knows that you can see it too. If you've made it this far, you're already part of the story. You've already looked too long into the darkness, so perhaps the only protection now is to share this knowledge, to spread the pattern, to dilute its attention. Leave a comment with the words, "I see it too," so I know you've received this warning. Subscribe for more hidden truths that they don't want you to know. The boogeyman has many names across many cultures, but always the same nature, always the same purpose, always the same pattern. And now that you know, now that you understand, perhaps you'll notice that your closet door, which you're certain you closed earlier, now stands ever so slightly ajar. Is that just the darkness beyond, or is something standing there, watching you, waiting? Whatever you do, don't look directly at it. They never find the ones who don't look directly at it. Sleep well, if you still can.